Hey, what I want to talk about is, the title I gave Nabil was How to Rewild Your Nervous System, Master Your Stress Response, and Unleash the Copywriting Beast Inside You. And really, yeah, I've started a new business where I'm teaching these skills to people, not just copywriters, but it's really a way of working with the nervous system, working with the fight or flight response. You may have heard of that. You may be somewhat familiar with it. Um, and it's completely changed my life, not just with copywriting or this, but everything. And we'll get more into sort of why and how that works. But yeah, and it's so relevant to copywriting just because probably most of the challenges, if not all the challenges, people that really holds people back is internal shit, right? It's the emotional, mental stuff, that kind of game. If you can figure that out, the other stuff is not necessarily easy, but it's more straightforward, right? It doesn't mean getting clients is going to be really straightforward and easy. You're just going to click your fingers and you're going to get all the clients you want. But if you can get out of your own way, that stuff becomes a lot simpler, not easy. So that's what we're going to try and do today. So the first thing I want you to do is we're going to do one of the practices that I teach people with RageHeart. RageHeart is the company that I've started, RageHeart.co if you wanted to look into it. But one of the first practices I teach people is really just a way to drop in, to get out of the mind and into the body, to land in the moment, which is going to help you. If you learn to practice this will help not just right now, but also with when you're writing copy, when you're on sales calls, anytime you just need to be more relaxed, basically. So it's really simple. It starts by looking around wherever you are. So looking around the room that you're in, the space, the cafe, and doing like a slow, easy look, right? If you think about like an animal when they're scared, their eyes are darting around, right? If you think about a cat or a dog, they hear a loud sound, they're like, boom. Look at birds, the way they dart around, because they're really in like a fight or flight state. So one way to regulate this or to bring it down is to look around like you've got all the time in the world, really slowly, easily, lazily. You're kind of gazing at a really beautiful sunset. Just noticing what you notice as you do that. You don't have to notice anything in particular. And even without trying to notice anything in particular, you will still notice things. Now, see if you could feel the ground or the chair beneath you. So it's really your connection to the environment through your sense of touch. So I'm standing, so I can feel my feet. If you're in a chair, you might feel the chair and your feet. If your feet are swinging or off the ground, you might just feel the chair. So just notice that as well. Again, how does it show up in your awareness? And different people are going to have different capacities for feeling what's there. And it's not about being perfect or doing it in a particular way. It's doing it your way. And see if you can then see what's happening while also feeling the chair or the ground beneath you. Can you do those two things at the same time? Can you both see or hear? If you didn't have access to eyes for whatever reason, you could hear. The point is to balance a kind of external awareness of the environment with a more internal awareness, say of the chair or the ground. Can you do those two things at the same time? And just notice how that feels. How does that affect your sense of yourself? How does it affect your mind, your thoughts? And finally, just notice your breath. No need to change it or take a deep breath or anything like that. Just notice it. You're breathing with no effort. So this is one of probably the most essential practice in RageHeart and what I teach people when it comes to working with the nervous system. And really, it's about taking this basic practice and developing it. Like on the guitar, for example, if you're learning to play the guitar or the piano, or learning a language, we start with something simple. This might not be that simple depending on where you're at, but we start with something doable for most people. And then we gradually layer in more complexity. It's kind of like with copywriting, you learn something basic first, and then gradually we make it more complicated. So this is going to make more sense as we go through the training today, and you'll learn how to use this in your copywriting career, in your life. These are not skills that are just for copywriting. This is really how to master and regulate your nervous system, which you can then use with copywriting, but you can use it also when meeting people, with your family, anytime you like. I'm using it all day long. This has become such a crucial part of my life. I just keep doing it. I can't imagine ever not doing it. It just becomes more and more automatic, more and more. It's like a language. You just start to speak it without really trying. So next up, what I want to really start with in terms of the content is just to focus on some of the problems that copywriters face. So I'd love it if you could jump into the chat and tell me what kind of problems when it comes to copywriting, what challenges do you feel like you have? What's stopping you from making as much money as you want, having the success that you want, the freedom And just a quick note as well with it, like exercises like this, when it looking around, feeling the ground, noticing the breath. These techniques are simple, but they can be very powerful in the way that they bring us into our body. And depending on what's in the body or happening in the body at that time, it can be could be great. It could feel really good. Or it could be, if there's, say, anger or different sensations in there, discomfort, it could be quite uncomfortable. So if things start to change and you start to feel strange, or how you feel shifts in a negative direction, just understand, just know that that's okay. So for some examples in terms of problems, when I think about problems that copywriters face, right? Procrastination is a very, very common one. Imposter syndrome, self-doubt, fear. I mean, a lot of it just revolves around fear, right? Feeling afraid of what might happen, self-sabotage. So different challenges. Other challenges might be things like you can't get clients, or you can get people on the phone, but you can't close them. These kinds of things, right? Here we go. We got a question. We got a problem from Andre. I hope I pronounced that right. The biggest issue is there's seemingly so many things to do. I have a hard time organizing. Oh, it's gone.
Go ahead. It's in the answer
So I go
section.
back to answered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Biggest issue is there's seemingly so many things to do that I have a hard time organizing it the most effective way to execute. So analysis paralysis and procrastination as a result. That's a good one, right? So we think about like so many different things to do. So part of that's going to be an organizational issue, right? Knowing how to organize, having a good system for organizing your to-do lists, your projects, having some software maybe. But a big part of it, and I think the bigger piece that most people miss, is the stress response to that, right? So we have so many different things happening and we get stressed, but then because we don't know how to manage that stress in a healthy way, the solution is to procrastinate, to avoid, right? We don't know how to manage the stress, say, by regulating the nervous system, by feeling the ground, looking around, by using a technique like that. So instead, we have to just avoid the task, because if we avoid it, we avoid the stress. The system, the brain, the what we are as people is trying to avoid the stress, the fear. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that a lot of issues that we think are like a client issue and a sales issue and a copywriting issue, an organization issue, there are technical aspects to this. For example, sales, there's a learning how to sell, right? That's not just a mental, like a stress thing. That's, you need to learn the words to say, the templates to use, a script, for example. But there is that element. But I think the bigger element that most people miss is this managing the stress response, managing the fight or flight response, right? And if we go back to jump into fight or flight quickly, fight or flight is basically the idea that, or the mechanism in the nervous system that when there is a threat, when we feel stressed, we either want to fight it, attack it, or we want to run away from it. So we're feeling stressed. Procrastination, we could think of is in some ways a flight response, one way to look at it. So if we have another way to regulate that, to bring the system down out of fight or flight, we won't need to procrastinate to bring the fight or flight response down. I hope that's making sense. That's the point here that I'm trying to show, is that, a lot of it's about this stress response, the nervous system response. Anything else? Are there any other challenges that people have, or is that, I'm guessing that's pretty clear. And then when it comes to solving these problems, I'm curious if you feel like sharing, jump in the chat or the Q&A box, whatever we call that, and let me know, how do you deal with these problems? How do you personally manage procrastination or organization? Or if you're not, like self-doubt or imposter syndrome, I know are huge ones. How do you manage that personally? What do you do? I know what I used to do. I used to meditate. I meditated daily for, I think, 20 minutes a day for almost 10 years. Lots of coffee, 2, 3. I remember in Thailand, I drink these double long blacks. So maybe 3 a day. Then I'd crash, of course. YouTube motivational videos, that was another one. There's yet like a sort of 2-minute track from whoever, Jocko Willink or some famous person, to some inspirational music. Journaling is another one. Oh, why can't I do this? Journaling, why am I procrastinating? Gratitude list is another one. Maybe if I'm feeling negative, if I can be grateful what's happening in my life, I can shift the negativity, and then hopefully I can procrastinate less. Limiting belief work is another one, right? So this is going to vary depending on who you learned it from, but there's different ways of doing it. But you might figure out what the limiting belief is, like I don't deserve to make money, or I'm not good enough, or different beliefs that people have. And then there's like a journaling process or a writing process or even an NLP process where you can shift that. Debs says, being afraid to put myself out there in my marketing. So the worry that it'll be wrong. So we're going back to the problem there. Being afraid that it'll be, worried that it'll be wrong, or I'll seem inexperienced. So we could think about that as a fear, really. You've mentioned being afraid or worry. So it's fear. And anonymous attendee says, I just take action and not think about it. If that works perfectly, then keep doing that. But that's another thing. I'd say just call that discipline. Some people, it's like, just psych yourself up, just do it. Do a bit of that. But I could never sustain it. That was the problem with that strategy. Like, it's like there might be a barrier of fear or doubt or imposter syndrome, and I could fight my way through that, but I wouldn't last. He says, generally after procrastination, I end up just forcing myself. Let me know if that works. I'm guessing if you're here today, that's probably not working perfectly. Because if it was, you'd probably be booked up with clients, making all the money you need and spending the rest of your time traveling or doing whatever it is that you want to do. Because that to me was a bit of like a motivational video or discipline, or Jocko Willink is one of those guys where it's, yeah, you just do it. But yeah, like I said, it didn't work consistently. It would work for a week or two, and then I'd crash, and then I'd psych myself up again, and this constant yo. So Andre says it works to a certain extent, but not very effectively. Exactly. Therapy is another one. Therapy is maybe getting a little bit closer, because then it's trying to look for the deepest psychological or emotional roots of what's really happening in these situations. So I tried all of these things. These are all things I've done. A few people have mentioned just basically just doing it. All these common things that people do. And I tried all of these things, but while it works to a certain extent, like Andre said, they didn't really get to the root of things. Right? I would get things moving, but not consistently. It would work for a few days or a few weeks, but it wouldn't stay. So the question is why? Why do these things not work that well? And I think part of it is, if you look at like most of these techniques, it addresses the problem as though it's really like a mind issue, right? Meditation to me is, if I can silence the mind, then I can do the work, right? The mind is the problem. Gratitude to me would be changing the mind, right? The thoughts, instead of negative thoughts, we have positive thoughts. Okay, great. Does that work? Not my experience, not that well. I feel better. Doesn't necessarily get me moving, get me doing the things that I want to do, right? Therapy depends on what kind of therapy you're doing, but therapy, life coaching, journaling, a lot of this is about analyzing what's happening in the mind, analyzing the past, thinking about it, right? And so a lot of this discipline to me is just forcing your way through whatever the actual problem is, not really dealing with the problem, just trying to bulldoze your way through it. And so the reason I think these things don't work, in my experience, and I'll explain why in a second, comes back to this fight or flight response, is that they're all approaching the problem as though it's a mental issue. Even like you look at the mental health industry, like we name it something as though the whole thing is about the mind, as though that's really it. It's all a mental thing. Mental mindset. That's another word that comes up. It's your mindset, as though the whole thing is about what's happening in your mind. Right. And this to me is the problem. This is where we're all getting misled, is we think the problem's up here, when really the problem is throughout the entire system. And I would say the nervous system, right? So the nervous system, you have the autonomic nervous system, right? The autonomic nervous system runs like your heart, your blood pressure, your skin, digestion, all these automatic functions in the body. Part of that autonomic nervous system is you have the sympathetic side and the parasympathetic. So your sympathetic nervous system is what allows you to get shit done. It's what allows you to run away or fight someone off, fight back. Parasympathetic is we're resting, we're eating, we're digesting, we're learning. If you think about it, like if we're in fight or flight, if you were running from a bear, are you going to sit down and read a copywriting book or take some time to email a copywriting client? Of course not, right? So fight or flight is not where we learn. It's not where we get work done. Parasympathetic, when we're resting, we're digesting, we're calm, we're able to learn, we're able to take new information in because we're not in danger, we're not under threat. So to me, the real problem is this fight or flight response that's basically out of whack, right? It's all out of kilter. So a lot of people are spending their life in fight or flight, some amount of it. It may not be super intense, like literally running from a bear right now, but it can be just low level, kind of insidious, enough that you can ignore it, but not enough that doesn't affect you. And so a lot of people are living in there. Coffee ramps up adrenaline, puts us in some ways into fight or flight. It accentuates those elements. Thanks, Caroline. She just put a question in there. She just said, nervous system regulation has changed her life. She had quite wet eyes before this call, realizing how much her life has changed for the better. This time last year, she didn't think she would get out of bed. Now she has the kind of inner peace she'd have chopped off her hand for, and she gets paid to be her. Lol. So grateful you're here, Jon and Nabil. Thank you. Sounds good, Caroline. Thank you for showing up. Love to hear more about your journey sometime. Coming back to the problem here, the problem is not the mind. It's not our mindset. It's not the thoughts that we have going through our head. The problem is this fight or flight response that's all out of whack, right? So we have a copywriter who wants to go and reach out to a client. They want to write some copy. But what happens is they feel it basically triggers their fight or flight response, right? Because it feels dangerous, depending on what we've been through in our lives, especially what happened to us as kids, how our parents related to us. We will have some amount, some sort of nervous system wiring, almost like a programmed response to threats. And so if we didn't get approval, the right kind of approval or love when we were growing up, or we were rejected for putting ourselves out there by our parents or people at school or whatever it happens to be, we may have an automatic response that when we go to reach out to that client, when we go to write some copy, it triggers that same feeling, not thoughts, the feeling of danger. That to me is the whole root of the root of this whole thing. We feel unsafe, right? Because if you take action, if you reach out to a client, write copy, it might not work. You might get in trouble, just like you got in trouble when you were a kid. We all do, right? So we procrastinate to avoid making a mistake or getting rejected or whatever. It's kind of like when we were kids. If we said the wrong thing to our parents, I had this with my parents, right? If I said the wrong thing, one of them might blow up and yell at me, right? Some parents get violent, right? There's all kinds of things that happen. And so kids, people, young people, little people learn to, okay, well, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to put myself out there because I just get in trouble. I lose the love. I lose the attunement and connection that I need to stay alive as a kid. That becomes a program later in life when it's no longer really functional or necessary, right? If we fail with a client, we're still going to be able to eat, right? We can still survive. We're not going to die. Whereas if you fail with a parent, the way the nervous system thinks or feels is, okay, if this parent gets rid of me, fires me, I'm out on the street and I'm 3 years old. There's no way I can survive then. It's all an unconscious survival program. But as adults, that the program's still there, but it's no longer functional. It's no longer fits the moment because the client can fire us, but we're going to survive. We can go get food from somewhere, even if we don't have enough money. We can figure something out because we're an adult now. So what we need to do is fix these survival responses, right? Fix this feeling of being unsafe. And so what if the root, like I said, what if the root issue is that you don't feel safe on a gut level, right? Not a mind thing. It's not a mental thing. It's not saying I'm safe. I know I'm safe. I know I really am safe. I can make a list of all the reasons I'm safe. It's not really about that. It's about the nervous system, which includes the mind, right? The brain is a part of the nervous system, but it's really we might think about it as like a head, heart, and gut thing, right? If we think about the head as the seat of thinking, the heart is the seat of emotion, and the gut is the seat of like instinct, right? So a lot of our sense of safety, we feel it in the gut. That's where we have to get it to, a deep, profound sense of safety, which means that then you can reach out to clients, you can write copy, you can do these different things because you're going to be fine. And you don't just know it, you feel that you are safe. Even if this client tells you to fuck off or whatever, you are safe. So the question is, how do you increase that felt sense of safety? I can't get my words out. That felt sense of safety. And how do you talk about safety? If safety really is the root of so many of these issues, the root of procrastination, the root of imposter syndrome, how do we actually increase safety? If we look at meditation and gratitude, do they ever talk about safety? Not that I ever heard. I've never read a meditation book that mentions safety. All this spiritual stuff, great, never talks about safety, right? It never actually addresses the core of so many of these issues. But if you understand your nervous system, if you understand the fight or flight response and how the body actually regulates, because the system has all these different instincts, functions, these ways of regulating and coming down and out of fight or flight. If you understand that, it's actually pretty simple. It takes practice, especially when we've spent a lifetime of not doing these things, of not feeling, of staying all the time in our head. And simple, what I mean really, it's really simple. Not always easy, but simple. And one example is animals. I've recently I got 2 kittens. We got 2 kittens here in Peru for Christmas. We chose to get them. They weren't a gift from a friend or something. So we got 2 kittens, and it's really fun watching them. You can do this with any animal. When animals fight, you watch kittens fight, dogs fight, or even when they just hear a loud noise, what do? They look towards the sound because it's a potential threat. In the nervous system, they call this defensive orienting, right? They're orienting towards the threat to see if it's a threat. And if it is, they prepare to fight or run away all automatically. Or if it's not a threat, the system's like, oh, okay. System resets, comes out of fight or flight, adrenaline decreases, right? And then if they're not under threat, they do what we did at the beginning. We might call that exploratory orienting. So instead of orienting towards a narrow focused target, defensive orienting, it's more like a wide focus, like looking at a sunset, looking around really slowly, I watch my cats do this. Storm and Zeus, they sort of gaze softly around the room. There's a sound, a little mouse crawling somewhere. So understanding this basic, we call it the orienting response. Understanding that, knowing how it works, gives you a tool to start to regulate that fight or flight response. Right? And this is why with RageHeart, one of the angles I'm playing with, being a copywriter, I'm trying different angles. One of the angles I'm playing with is unleash the beast, right? And that's not like a beast necessarily in terms of success, but beast in getting in touch with the animal side of us, the instinctual, animalistic side. Peter Levine, one of the guys in this space, calls this waking the tiger, right? So RageHeart, unleash the beast, same idea. And that to me is really what it's based on, is getting back in touch with these instincts, these abilities. So to do it with safety, we'll come back to the orienting in the next exercise. Again, just take a pause, look away from your screen, and just see if it's safe where you are. And when we've been through a lot of stuff, a lot of difficult experiences in our lives, a lot of stress, essentially, what can happen is that we have a very well-developed danger map. We know all the ways, all the things that tell us something's unsafe, which then can lead to a person feeling like they're never safe. They feel anxious, right? They don't even know what safety looks like if it's right in front of them. So if that's you, that's okay. Just know that that's not a static thing. We can change that. And so to me, it's really about rebuilding, creating, cultivating a new map of what safety looks like. And so I know for me, what helps is thinking about, if it was unsafe, well, hey, there might be a tiger somewhere in this room. So if there's no tigers around, I'm at least safe from tigers, right? Or if it's really quiet, right? Threats usually come with loud noises, right? The more, it's not even noises, it's just anything that pops out of the, would say, the texture of the environment. So like a loud noise, a loud sound, something that doesn't fit, that's more likely to be a threat, right? So if those things aren't there, if it's pretty chill, I'm not hearing any loud noises, no screaming, no explosions. I'm also not seeing any fast-moving objects coming towards me. If those things aren't there, noticing the absence of these things can help us to really start to feel and notice that there's a lot of safety here right now. And where this gets tricky is if we live somewhere with people who aren't safe, whether they're parents, kids, siblings, friends, whoever they are, if we're living with someone who we don't feel safe around because they're either physically or emotionally violent, right? To me, emotional gaslighting, things like that, guilt tripping, these are violent, emotional violence. We're not going to feel safe where we live, which can make doing this work with this way of regulating the nervous system tricky. Because if we might look around the room that we're in and we're safe, but if we're living in a place that's really unsafe, the system won't really come down properly. So that's a little hint that if you are living somewhere like that, working in this way with the nervous system is going to work a lot better if you can find a way to live somewhere where it's you feel genuinely totally safe. So that's the external things. We can look at external safety. We can orient to the external safety. We can also orient internally, right? So if I was unsafe right now, and I've had this before, when someone might say something to me and my heart kicks up, starts racing, and I feel like I'm just about having a panic attack. I had this a few years ago, and once it settled down, it was fine. I was like, that's my system. It's like, stay the hell away from this person. This person's dangerous. So I didn't feel safe in that moment. I didn't feel safe with that person. And I listened to that. I trusted that. But if that's not there right now, my heart's pretty restful. My stomach feels fairly fine. There's not like a tensing or butterflies or anything in my stomach. So noticing those things, noticing the absence again of physiological signs of threat inside my body can also be a way to let my nervous system know that it's safe. And there's something about this paying attention to it, right? So our nervous system, we might think about it, it doesn't speak in words. So we can't really say, I'm safe. Well, you can, but it's not going to work very well. The language is the mind's tool, right? We speak to the mind with language or to other people. But when it comes to the nervous system, the gut, it's a non-verbal thing. This is why if we want it to feel safe, to start to go, it actually is safe, we have to speak its language. And it speaks in sensations, right? So colors, sounds, sensations internally. This is why saying I'm safe doesn't really work, but orienting to the safety in the environment and giving your nervous system the raw data it needs that it's safe works. So the way to use this as a copywriter is the next time you feel stressed, right? You're about to send a cold email to a client. You're about to send them your copy, your sales letter, whatever it happens to be. If you are feeling stressed and activated and resisting it and you want to procrastinate, see what happens if you simply pause. Don't procrastinate, but don't necessarily do it. Just stop. and just look around wherever you are in that moment and just see if it's safe. Be a quick thing. You can spend minutes, 5, 10 minutes. You can spend as long as you want on it. But even just that one simple thing can start to shift things in the direction of relaxation, even in moments of stress. I'm not saying it's going to magically get rid of all of it, because we're human beings. I think it's normal to feel a little bit of stress or some stress in some of these situations. The goal isn't to never feel any stress or activation. The goal is to get better at managing it, navigating it. And so really what we're doing here is working with the fight or flight response, like I've been saying. So again, if we think about the cat, the dog, human beings do this too. We're all orienting. If there was a noise out your window, I'm pretty sure most human beings, unless they're very in freeze, that's a whole other part of the nervous system we probably don't have time to go into today, but if there's a loud sound out your window, or someone opens the door where you're in and screams at you, the first thing you're going to do is probably look at them, orient towards the threat. You orient defensively. And then if they leave, you have a conversation or you look out the window and there's a sound and then you can't see anything. And then you come back to the webinar, the workshop. Okay, I can relax. It's not even a conscious thing. You probably just look and then come back, get a little bit distracted and come back. All right, so just understanding. Part of it is, to me, one of the benefits of this is just understanding this, what do you call it? Like a function or like a system in the body. How when there's a threat, it orients towards and then how it comes back to regulation. So it's a threat, there's activation to motivate the fight or flight response, and then we orient towards it to see if it's a real threat. If it is, we run away, we attack. If it's not, we relax. Now, if you want to take it further, that's where we come back to the dropping in exercise we did at the very beginning. So try it now. Come back to safety. Orient to the safety in the environment around you. Are there any tigers anywhere? Hopefully you're not at a zoo. I might render that. Well, there's a cage in between you. Any screaming people with knives or guns? No? Any hurricanes or rocks or fire bombs about to drop onto your head? I can't see any out here. See if you can do that now while feeling the ground or the chair. Can you orient to the safety in the environment while also feeling the surface beneath you? What if you hear? Can you hear the safety, the lack of threats while feeling the surface beneath you? Can you see and hear the lack of threats? Can you blend seeing and hearing together while feeling the surface beneath you? And now bring in the breath, right? So just start by noticing the breath. What does it happen to be doing at this point in time? Is it fast or slow? If it's quickening or quicker, that can simply be a sign we're in a little bit more sympathetic fight or flight activation. And it's okay. The common advice is to take a deep breath, and sometimes that's necessary, but sometimes it's not. If we take a deep breath when there's some activation in the system, it will settle the system. It can settle the system. But if the stress response doesn't complete, this is another aspect of the nervous system work, is if the stress response doesn't complete, that stress can stay in the body. So you may shut it down now and feel more relaxed, but in the long run, it may not be serving you. It's all about knowing your limits. If you feel like it's okay to keep feeling stress, keep feeling the discomfort, then go with that. So feeling the surface beneath you, noticing your breath now. Can you notice your breath while also feeling the surface beneath you? So breath, surface beneath you. See if you can do it without controlling the breath or directing it in any way. That can take some practice. Start to bring in the environment again. So the safety in the environment, the lack of tigers and monsters and scary people and hurricanes and whatever else. Just notice the lack of that, hear the lack of that, while also feeling the ground and noticing your breath, the chair. How does that feel? How do you feel now compared with before we did that exercise? Do you feel more activated or more relaxed? How does your body feel? Did anything change in your body throughout that exercise? And it may have, it may not. Bill says he's feeling more relaxed. That's good news. To be fair though, I mean, sometimes this stuff can stir things up, right? We can have stress from the past hanging out in the nervous system. And when we start dropping into it with these exercises, it can come up. So like sometimes depending on what's close to the surface, it's like shaking up a snow globe. If there's some stuff, some stress, some fear or doubts or anger or different emotions can get shaken up in the snow globe. And then sometimes that's what we can feel. There we go. Paul Gulen is feeling more present. Awesome. I remember when I first found this exercise, when someone first taught, when I first learned it, I used to feel, everyone feels different things, but just some cues. Sometimes I'd feel my shoulders. I'd realize that the shoulders are I'd only realize that they're tense when I start doing the exercise. And then as I really feel, the shoulders would drop just a little bit. But I started to realize I'd be holding tension, stress in my shoulders, right? So it becomes a very physical thing. Or sometimes there was this sense of, I don't know how to describe it. It's like for the first time I realized just how concentrated my focus or energy was around my head. And then as I started to feel the ground and look around, there was this sense of, there's almost this sensation moving down into the body, as if, I don't know if this is literally what was happening, but if you think about maybe the soul or whatever we are, consciousness is actually like a invisible cloud. And because I'd been spending my life thinking, it was all focused around my head without me even realizing it, all just coagulated and sticky and stuck up here. But once I started to feel the ground and orient and feeling safe, it's like all of that started spreading out through the entire body. My sense of myself expanded into the body much more than it ever had in my entire life. And one thing I'm trying to do with RageHeart, right, is avoid this sounding like spiritual mumbo jumbo shit, right? Because to me, it's absolutely not that. It really is working with the nervous system. It's very scientific, understanding how the fight or flight response works. And it has very direct, practical implications for everything, including copywriting. Because like I've been saying, I think these problems, procrastination and imposter syndrome and all the things copywriters and people everywhere struggle with when it comes to creating the life that they want. I think the root of all of these problems, it's the nervous system, right? It's this fight or flight response. So that's why, to me, it's not a spiritual thing. It's not about just being present, the power of now, all this fluffy, lovely sounding stuff, flowery words. It's a very practical, if we can figure this out, we're going to be better in every way across the board, not just with copywriting, with everything. So one last thing, I think I'm aiming for an hour. I'm guessing we'll do an hour and then we can do some Q&A afterwards if there's any questions. And I'll try and have it done on the hour. But the last thing, there's so many different things I'd love to teach, but it would take weeks to get through all of it. One really useful thing is knowing how to feel feelings, right? So when we're going to, say, reach out to a client, we're going to write a sales page, we're going to write an email, we're going to do some form of copywriting, and there's some activation, right? We start to move into fight or flight. Sometimes all that needs to settle is for us to look around the room and see if it's safe, to feel the ground, notice our breath, right? These kinds of things. Sometimes, though, that's not enough. Sometimes the feeling just needs to be felt, right? Very often, if we're not willing to feel something, it gets a bit stuck. And often thinking, in my experience, is usually just a way to avoid feeling. In the nervous system world, we would call this a resource or a coping mechanism, right? It's a distraction. As long as we're thinking and worrying, we're not really feeling the raw sensation of something, right? We might say, oh, I'm really worried about this, but that's a thought. Oh, I don't know what's going to happen when I can't pay my rent next month. Again, that's a thought, right? Oh, but I'm really scared because blah, blah. That's a thought. These are all thoughts. Noticing the thought, no matter how much it says it's about fear, is not feeling the feeling, right? So how do we feel? How do we feel? How do we feel feelings? Whether it's anger or fear, you get an email from a client and you're pissed off and you want to write something back that you might regret later. How do you feel that? Because you might be, oh, I'm so angry, I'm pissed off, they blah. Again, you're not really feeling the anger. You're just thinking about having thoughts about it. So in the nervous system world, again, there's different techniques for doing this. But best way to practice it, you don't have too long. I would say right now, see if you can find a place of discomfort in your body. Now, if it's too much, depending on what's there, if it feels overwhelming or it's not safe to go into that right now, that's okay. We're not trying to deal with our deepest, most serious, worst traumas or worst life experiences that can come down the line. Just something that feels okay for the next 5 or 10 minutes, some kind of discomfort in the body. For example, I feel a little bit of tension and sort of in the traps, I guess. I don't know my muscles very well, the specific names, but sort of right here, there's a little bit of tension there for me. I have some things in my face at the moment too, right around the jaw. So see if you can you track and find something in your body that feels a little bit just uncomfortable, not overwhelming, just a bit uncomfortable. And as you place your attention there, what does it feel like? Instead of calling it anger or fear, which to me is quite conceptual, think about it this way. Is it a soft sensation or a sharp, right? Is it sort of diffuse, cloudy, we might say? Or is it sharp, like maybe it's like a knife or a pen pointing in that spot, like a cramp or something? Can you feel for that? So the point of these questions is to help us to focus on the raw sensation of the feeling, not the story about what the feeling means. If it was a color, what color would it be? Just go with your first impulse with that. I've had a feeling in my stomach once where I was like, if I was to give this like a color, it's like green or brown, like there's some murky. And then I had the image of like a swamp. It's got that swampy, icky stuff. To me, that's shame. That's what shame feels like to me, at least. Like a sense of I'm not good enough, I'm broken, I'm bad meat, something like that. Again, a very valuable survival feeling, except when it's out of control. Is the sensation of discomfort, is it moving? Does it sort of move around a little bit? Or is it perfectly static in one place as you feel it? And maybe it stays still for a few seconds and then it moves a little bit. And it can help as we do this. So actually, I would really encourage you to keep your eyes open. If you've shut your eyes, that's okay, but open them up. There's something about balancing this external awareness, the environment, with the internal. So if we're feeling discomfort, having the eyes open at the same time, can you be aware of the environment through your eyes and the sensation of discomfort inside you at the same time? That, you're welcome to play with it, but that, in my experience, is one of the most effective ways of having this feeling start to dissolve. It's a bit like we're massaging the feeling with our awareness, with our attention. And as we do that, sometimes that discomfort can start to dissolve. And then the interesting thing is, a lot of our thoughts, imposter syndrome, we might say, negative thoughts, negative thinking, negative beliefs. To me, the root of all this stuff is in the body, is in these feelings. If that feeling of discomfort that we might have, it's almost like it's a pocket of sensation. Sometimes there can be emotion in there, whether it's fear or sadness or shame or anger, guilt. And as long as that's there, it's for some reason, I don't know why it works like this, but in my experience, this is how it works. This thing will start to generate thoughts in their head. It's like the mind, the ego, is built out of all these unfelt feelings throughout the whole body. And if we can start to feel into these things and through them, if we can start to bring, because the more we feel that, the more the system comes out of fight or flight, the more all this stuff in their head just dissolves on its own, to the point where I can't really remember the last time I journaled, because I don't feel like I need to do it anymore. It's such a common thing these days, journaling. But I find that I don't need to figure out my mind. If I can feel the ground and start to regulate and smooth out my nervous system simply through feeling, all the mind stuff, the mental chatter, it just dissolves on its own. I don't really need to focus on it. I don't need to worry about it. So this is with an exercise like this, starting to feel the internal, especially the discomfort. It can be intense depending on what's there that day. That's why I'd say it's important to take breaks. If it feels overwhelming, stop, pause, go do something fun, distract yourself. That's another part of this nervous system stuff. You have permission. It's important actually to be able to go into the discomfort like this and then to be able to go back out and watch Netflix, play some video games, go for a walk outside. I love to play my guitar and sing. For me, that works beautifully, right? So we find different ways it's all about going into it and then back out of it, into the pain, the fear, the doubt, whatever, and then coming back out. It's just going back and forth that is the key, not getting stuck in either side. Okay. So feeling the ground as we wrap up. What time is it? Looking around the room that you're in, making sure it's safe still. No tigers have snuck up on you. Noticing your breath. And remember that you can do this. You can do this anytime you like, anytime you feel stressed, anytime you feel relaxed. I love to do it in bed at night, lying in bed, feeling the bed, my head on the pillow, noticing my breath, keeping my eyes open. I find that is a much more effective way to fall asleep than just about anything. And as we learn to do this simply with our attention, learning how to regulate our system the way animals do, unleashing the beast, things like alcohol, cigarettes, weed, porn, shopping, sex, a lot of the unhealthy strategies we have for managing the activation in our system, procrastination, like we said, a lot of this stuff starts to fall away. So we become healthier, we're happier, we get a lot more done, and life just gets a hell of a lot better. And then you get to do all the copywriting stuff. You write better copy, you get better clients, you make more money, and you get to live that lifestyle, the copywriting lifestyle. So that's it. That's all I got for you.
Very nice. All right. So for anybody who has questions, if you want to come on, put your camera mic on and ask live, feel free to do that. Just raise your hand and I'll add you as a panelist. Or if you have any other questions and you don't want to come on camera, you can just pop them in the Q&A. And so I have a question actually. So is it really this easy? It's just do this exercise and then the anxiety or the procrastination goes away? Or is this something that you have to continuously work at?
Well, I'd love to tell you it would just work. You click your fingers, you do this, the anxiety's gone. But the truth is, it's a process. It's a long-term thing. To me, like I say on RageHeart, if you sign up to RageHeart, the daily email newsletter, the confirmation page is like, make sure this is what you want to do. Like, this is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for people who are looking for a quick like a quick, easy, fast, the rapid solution. That's not what this is. There are some very simple tools like we've talked about today, and they will tend to work very quickly, or you can notice changes more or less immediately. But like Nabil, you mentioned feeling more relaxed, more present. There can be changes like that, but at the same time, when we spend a lifetime operating in a certain way, relating to our fight or flight response to our nervous system in a certain way, it takes time to change those habits, to repattern or reprogram the system. And part of this is, I didn't get into it too much here, but often what we're reacting to is not so much the client say or the situation that's present here. Often what we're reacting to is all the stuff that we've stored in us from the past. And a lot of that's from childhood. It can be even from in utero. There's stuff that says now that say, for example, if our mother's really stressed when she's pregnant with us, the baby or the unborn baby, the fetus, still has mammalian nervous system. It still wants to run away or fight back, but it can't. Right? So it goes into freeze. If we can't execute fight or flight because we're in our mum's belly, we can't fight our mum off because we're inside her, and we can't run away because we're inside her. It goes into something called freeze. What that does is that means there's all this stress running through the baby's body because it's what's running through the mum's body. That stress then gets, we would say, stuck, frozen into the nervous system of the baby. The baby gets born. The baby then has, we might even think, some form of PTSD, a stress disorder, an issue with stress from day one. And then you've got, of course, everything that happens from that point forward, which for most people it's not perfect by any means. And so as we start to do this, as we start to feel the ground and look around, these things from the past are going to start to come up. And I think, to me, that's really what's coming up when we're procrastinating. It's not really about the situation. A lot of the time it's about the situation is triggering this fear and stress from the past. And so this is a very long-winded answer to your question, but it's really that this whole work is about having these things come up, having it come up and feeling through. I've been doing this for 3 or 4 years. I'm still going. Like I'm happier than I've ever been, more fulfilled, more energy. I sleep better. Just everything is doing better than it ever has, but it's still going. It's still an ongoing process. So it's not a magic bullet, and it's not for people who are afraid or don't want to go into this stuff. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And anytime that you're feeling this anxiety around the stuff that you have to do as a copywriter, what percentage of it is this sort of unresolved issues, and what percentage is actually just the discomfort of doing something new or going outside of your comfort zone, doing stuff that you haven't done before? Because if you think about it, you can't really get around doing the hard stuff of being a copywriter and building a career as a freelance service provider, that kind of thing, right? You're going to have to do the hard things. And so what I'm trying to understand is everything supposed to be easy, or are there situations where, despite the discomfort, we're just going to have to do it in spite of that?
Well, to answer that question, yeah, there are hard things in life. Like I've been doing this for a few years. Like going and doing a heavy set of squats in the gym is still just as painful now as it was 5 years ago before I got into this stuff. Like it's like everything's still the same in some ways. But what changes is the relationship to these stresses. I can't say what percentage someone's procrastinating a lot. There's no way for me to know, for anyone to know really, what percentage of that is from the past and what percentage of that is just what's happening here. It's obviously both, right? We have certain probably evolutionary learning from just how we've evolved to avoid standing out, right? We want to fit in with the tribe. Those things are at play. But in my experience, the bigger issue is that most people don't know how to manage the stress response. Because if they did, a lot of the other stuff, the present moment stuff, wouldn't be as much of an issue. Another caveat to this too, with say copywriting, if people are procrastinating, is sometimes it's that they don't really want to be a copywriter. Sometimes we procrastinate not because we're stressed out or not. yeah, we are procrastinating because we're stressed out, but the stress isn't, say, from the past. It's because this isn't what we'd really want to do. We're doing it because someone told us to. We're doing it because we think we want to do it. It's not a genuine, heartfelt, purpose-driven kind of thing. It's coming from a different place. And so that's another catch with this stuff. If we're doing, and some people, it depends on the person. Some people are probably right now at this point in time. My sister's one example. That's what they're meant to be doing, is copywriting. And how I can see that is if they start to do these exercises and they get more motivated, more interested, more driven. Okay, that's clearly what their system, what their person is meant to be doing right now. But if someone's in denial about wanting to do copywriting, they think they want to do it, but they don't really. What these techniques are going to do is make someone more connected to what they're feeling, which means it's going to be harder to deny what they're feeling. So if they don't want to do something, it's actually going to get harder to do that thing, which is one of the catches to this nervous system work. It's all well and good to become more embodied, more connected to ourselves, more authentic. But the catch is that then it becomes harder to do shit that you don't genuinely want to do.
That is an excellent point. I've sort of tweeted this before. I say anybody can become a copywriter. You just have to read thousands of pages and write millions of words. And so you have to actually enjoy writing in order to be a copywriter. There is an element of people pleasing and managing people, with dealing with clients. There are some copywriters, they're successful selling their own products, but they were not successful as people who are client service providers, whereas some people are the complete opposite. And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. This has to be something that you actually want to do. I think there's a lot of people getting into copywriting because they see this lifestyle or this caricature of a lifestyle on social media that gets promoted, but they are unaware of everything that goes into it. And if you're not somebody who enjoys writing thousands of words a day, this probably isn't the profession for you.
Exactly. So even you can look at that, like a lot of like techniques in the self-help world of like psyching yourself up, motivating yourself, all of that can sometimes be a tool to override. You don't really want to do it, but you can use different techniques from the self-help world, books and courses, to get yourself to do it anyway. But do you really want to do that? Do you really want to end up with a life that you don't really want? Probably not.
Absolutely. And I think for a lot of people, it's not the copywriting is just really the tool that they want for the goal that they're trying to accomplish. And the goal is really, I just want to make money doing as little as possible. And if that's the case, then there are far easier ways to make money than copywriting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, part of it, that's what's great about this nervous system stuff, is I've gone further down this road. That's why I've kind of moved out of copywriting, because back when 12 years ago, it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted to do. But over the last probably 5 years, I've kind of started to be like, this isn't really for me anymore. Like, I love the craft of it, but I don't want to be doing copywriting stuff, for example. That's why I started RageHeart, right? I don't want to be selling copywriting courses. There's enough of that stuff out there. There started to be this desire for more sense of meaning, fulfillment, right? And I wasn't getting that from writing random stuff for different people. And so that's what's interesting about the nervous system stuff, is people become more in tune with themselves. A lot of people want, I think this is what most people want, is fulfillment, purpose, meaning. A lot of that comes, in my experience, the more we do this work, the more we clear away the bullshit of the past and get more in tune with ourselves, the more we start to find what that purpose is. And for some people, that's going to be copywriting right now. I guess for me, it was 10 years ago. Like, I felt great. I loved it. I was all about it. Now, not so much. Right. And it took getting into this work, getting more in tune with my body, with my nervous system, to start to feel where the next path was, where the next step was. I tried for years trying to do it with my mind, trying to journal about it and think about it and read books about it. And it wasn't until I started feeling that it all started opening up.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably the number one takeaway, is that when you do this exercise of trying to actually feel the thing that you're feeling rather than think about the feeling, you might come to the conclusion that copywriting isn't for you, or you're procrastinating because this is really something that you don't want to do. And if I can get rid of a few people that way by showing them that this is not what they actually want to do, and they're probably better off going down a different path, I think I've saved them a lot of time and hassle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, copywriting's great. I mean, it really, what I'm doing with RageHeart now, like to be a copywriter for a few years at least, it's an incredible thing to learn how to do. You can get good at copywriting, good at marketing, figure it out, get a decent handle on it. Everything you do after that will be a lot easier. Whether you go back to working a job, you start a bit, like whatever direction you go in copyright. I'm so grateful for the time I did spend writing copy and reading the books and rewriting sales pages and all those different things, because now I can use all of that with something that I really deeply believe in. And if I hadn't done all that stuff with copywriting, it would be a lot harder right now. So yeah, I love copywriting. I might not want to do it right now in terms of writing for clients and all of that. But as far as like a skill goes, a linchpin, I've been reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I've been thinking about like linchpin habits, right? So like waking up early in the morning is a bit of a linchpin habit. If I can just do that, it unlocks so many other things. All these other habits start to come into play where it's like, oh, now I've got time for Spanish and I've got time to play some guitar or go to the gym or whatever. And so a linchpin skill, copywriting, if you can figure that out, it makes everything else easier and better.
You can see it on the RageHeart website. So I just subscribed to the newsletter, and I was reading the opt-in page and I was reading the thank you page, and so it's like the copywriting is like a skill, and the skill amplifies the thing that you actually want to do. So it's something cool to learn, but maybe you don't want to be a full-time freelance copywriter or an in-house copywriter working at an agency or at a company. Maybe you use the copywriting to do the thing that you actually want to do. I know Andre, he's got this, is it Andre or is it somebody else? But one of them has this SEO website that they're building, that they're trying to grow traffic to and things like that in order to monetize. And there, the copywriting skill helps, but they're not actually doing copywriting as a profession. So that might be the other option where you learn the copywriting and you use it to do the thing that you actually want to do. All right, so I don't see any other questions. Nobody's got their hand up, and I don't see anything in the Q&A. So I think let's call it. John, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day and joining us. I appreciate the fact that you gave us one actionable thing that we can do, and we can do it anytime whenever we're dealing with these issues. So that was super helpful. So thank you for that. And hopefully you can do something again soon.
No worries, Nabil. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate you coming.